Welcome to History Channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. President Abraham Lincoln speaks quietly with one of his generals near Antietam. October 1862. Around them, the ground still bears the weight of war. And behind Lincoln rests one of 39 captured Confederate flags, a silent reminder of victory at a terrible cost. As he contemplates the nation's fractured future, a Soviet Red Banner Army machine gunner stands poised in the freezing Siberian wilderness. 1936. His uniform is heavy, his expression calm yet alert. Training in these brutal conditions forged endurance and discipline that would later define the Soviet soldier during the coming World War, preparing him for unimaginable trials ahead. In Ottoman Jerusalem around 1900, Jews and Muslims gather side by side in narrow streets lined with stone. The city hums with traders, prayers, and shared traditions, long before modern borders divided it. The photograph captures a fleeting moment of coexistence beneath the same ancient sky. In June 1954, in a packed Washington, D.C. courtroom, Army Attorney Joseph Welch faces Senator Joe McCarthy. His calm but cutting words, "At long last, have you no sense of decency, sir?" pierce the air, marking the beginning of the end for McCarthy's Red Scare crusade. A German anti-tank gun crew braces in the mud of the Eastern Front. 1942. Smoke clouds the battlefield as they load and fire under relentless pressure. Every shell fired marks another desperate attempt to halt the advancing Soviet forces during one of history's harshest and bloodiest campaigns. German officers in 1940 inspect newly issued military gear before deployment. Their faces reveal a mixture of pride and unease, aware that the modern war machine they command is both powerful and perilous. These preparations mark the early confidence of a war that would soon consume Europe. In Moscow's Red Square, 1945, Marshals Zhukov, Eisenhower, and Stalin stand together at the Victory Parade. Flags wave, soldiers march, and the air carries both relief and suspicion. All eyes in triumph but rivals in ideology, they symbolize the fragile unity born from the ashes of World War II. At a birthday lunch in Finland, June 4, 1942, Adolf Hitler sits beside Finnish Commander-in-Chief Gustav Mannerheim. Served a non-alcoholic fruit salad, Hitler's strict abstinence contrasts with the festive air. Behind polite smiles, strategic tensions simmer between the Axis partners amid the turning tides of war. In 1993, Moroccan Police Commissioner Mustafa Tabet sits in court, head bowed in disgrace. Accused of horrific crimes against hundreds of women, his case exposes a deep web of corruption and abuse within the system meant to protect. The nation watches as justice confronts one of its darkest scandals. A haunting double exposure image from 1887 promotes the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, starring Richard Mansfield. His transformation on stage was so lifelike that audiences believed he might truly harbor darkness within. The illusion blurred the line between performance and madness, stirring Victorian fears anew. High in the Georgian mountains, 1924, resistance fighters crouch behind rocks, weapons in hand. Their revolt against Soviet occupation burns with determination but little hope. The uprising is crushed within weeks, yet their courage becomes legend, a symbol of defiance carried quietly through generations. At the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh in 1957, nurses sit attentively as a lecturer speaks. Their crisp uniforms and focused expressions reflect a post-war generation reshaping medicine with knowledge, compassion, and discipline. This calm classroom scene represents an era of rapid progress in modern healthcare. Amid dense jungle terrain in 1967, a U.S. tank commander peers through his lens atop an M48 Patton. The Vietnam War's heat and uncertainty surround him. Every movement demands vigilance as unseen threats lurk beyond the trees, defining the era's tense and unforgiving combat environment. Inside a Pepsi-Cola bottling plant in Novorossiysk, Soviet Union, 1974. Machines clatter rhythmically as workers monitor glass bottles on conveyor lines. The scene reflects a rare glimpse of Western brand presence in a communist state, symbolizing cautious economic exchange during the Cold War. In May 1971, Egyptian Chief of Staff Saad al-Shazli stands proudly beside his daughter Shadin, the nation's first female paratrooper. Their smiles mark a quiet revolution, a father's pride and a daughter's courage in breaking military barriers in a male-dominated world. In May 1946, Poles expelled from Rudki crowd inside cattle cars. Their belongings few and faces weary. More than 1 million were forced from annexed eastern lands after World War II. The train rattles toward an uncertain future in the so-called recovered territories, echoing Europe's great displacements. In 1965, the Milk Bar Benowitz in Johnsdorf, East Germany, serves simple socialist treats, milkshakes and pastries for families under watchful state eyes. The cheerful decor hides quiet restraint, as these modest cafes offered a rare taste of normalcy in a tightly controlled society. An old nail woman in Algeria, photographed in the 1910s, stands adorned in intricate jewelry and layered fabrics. Each ornament tells a story of tribal heritage, artistry, and independence. Her confident gaze challenges colonial stereotypes, embodying a proud culture rooted deep in North African tradition. Italian migrant workers arrive in Germany, 1938, carrying small suitcases and weary hopes. They seek seasonal farm labor in a Europe edging toward war. This quiet photograph captures both migration's dignity and hardship, men stepping into unfamiliar soil, uncertain of the world soon to erupt around them. Captured Soviet soldiers beg for food in a German POW camp. 1941. Their hollow faces reveal the brutal conditions of the Eastern Front, where millions perished in starvation and neglect. This harrowing image stands as a testament to suffering beyond the battlefield, unseen and unrecorded in official reports. A 22-year-old Xi Jinping, exiled to rural Lianjia in 1975, sits among local peasants. Once the privileged son of a purged official, he learns to live simply, working the land and sharing hardship. These formative years would shape his resilience and political philosophy in the decades ahead. French Colonel Desgrais de Lou raises his flag before leading men over the trenches at Champagne. 1915, amid shellfire and smoke. He waves it high, a defiant symbol of courage against overwhelming odds. Moments later, he charges into history, one of countless officers lost to the Great War. In Paris, 1946, Dr. Marcel Petiot stands in court beside suitcases filled with victims' belongings. The physician-turned-murderer is accused of killing 27 people under the guise of helping them escape Nazi persecution. His calm demeanor chills the courtroom as justice confronts monstrous deceit. In 1922, the unbroken seal of Tutankhamun's tomb is captured in a photograph. The ancient cords and clay remain untouched for over 3,000 years. Within days, Howard Carter would open it, unveiling one of archaeology's most breathtaking discoveries, the Boy King's untouched resting place. In June 1936, Soviet leaders bear the urn of writer Maxim Gorky through Moscow's streets. His funeral becomes a state event, blending reverence with propaganda. Once a revolutionary voice and later Stalin's cultural symbol, Gorky's passing marks the end of an era in Soviet intellectual life. The charred interior of the Apollo 1 capsule reveals the aftermath of the 1967 tragedy that claimed the lives of 3 American astronauts during a pre-flight test at Cape Kennedy. The fire, sparked by faulty wiring in a pure oxygen environment, forever changed NASA's approach to safety and spacecraft design. At Dirty Jack's Wild West Theater Chuckwagon Restaurant in Jackson, Wyoming, 1978, diners enjoyed cowboy-style meals surrounded by gun-toting actors and rustic decor. The quirky fusion of food and firearms recreated frontier nostalgia for tourists, seeking the romance and danger of America's Old West. In Trieste, 1942, the Italian battleship Roma takes shape in a massive shipyard. Sleek and imposing, it was among Italy's most advanced warships. Ironically, just a year later, it would be sunk by German-guided bombs, marking a tragic end to one of Italy's naval marvels. Sackville Street in Dublin lies shattered after the Easter Rising of 1916. Smoke drifts above the wreckage of once bustling shops and trams. The failed rebellion against British rule left the city scarred, but ignited a national spirit that would lead Ireland toward independence in the years ahead. In 1943, Soviet women aviators of the 46th Guards Night Bomber Regiment prepare their aircraft under moonlight. Known as the Night Witches, they flew plywood biplanes against German forces, cutting engines midder to glide silently before striking. Their courage became legend across the Soviet Union. A young Soviet political officer stands atop a trench on July 12, 1942, urging soldiers forward into battle. His raised arm signals not just attack but resolve. Many like him fell leading from the front, symbols of fierce patriotism during the desperate defense against advancing German armies. In May 1952, near Moscow, representatives of 27 faiths gather under Soviet supervision for an interfaith conference on world peace. Priests, imams, and monks sit beneath banners of ideological harmony. Yet behind the show of unity lies the state's effort to control and redefine religion within political limits. The home decor section at Woolworth's in 1964 glows with optimism. Rows of patterned curtains, lamps, and pastel furniture promise affordable style for every household. This scene captures mid-century America's consumer boom, when bright design and easy credit helped shape the suburban dream. Manhattan in 1908 buzzes with energy. Electric streetcars glide between towering brownstones as crowds in hats and long coats fill the sidewalks. It is a city in transition, old horse-drawn wagons fading into memory as modernity and ambition reshape New York's skyline and rhythm. A 1930s portrait of Jacobus Onnen hides a chilling truth. Once a respected teacher, he later became the Nazi officer seen executing a Jewish man in Vinnitsa, an image that defined the Holocaust's horror. His story embodies how ideology turned ordinary men into instruments of atrocity. In Berlin, Nazi officials remove a street sign honoring Gustav Stresemann, the Nobel Peace Prize-winning statesman of the Weimar era. His name, linked to diplomacy and reconciliation, no longer fit the regime's militaristic vision. After World War II, the sign was restored, a quiet act of historical justice. at Schönefeld Airport in East Berlin during the 1960s. Travelers moved through a modest terminal marked by strict security and limited destinations. Behind the Iron Curtain, air travel reflected both isolation and pride, a rare window to the outside world in a tightly controlled socialist state. On a frozen Korean hillside in 1952, Canadian soldiers play hockey on a makeshift rink. Laughter and competition cut through the tension of war. For a brief moment, the game offers warmth, camaraderie, and a taste of home amid the harsh realities of the front lines. A South Vietnamese widow kneels over a small plastic bag containing her husband's remains. Discovered a year after the Tet Offensive, he was one of many civilians murdered and buried in mass graves. Her grief reflects the unseen toll of a conflict that tore countless families apart. A wedding photo from 1896 shows Zona Heaster Shue and her husband, Edward Trout Shue, smiling in West Virginia. Within a year, Zona would die mysteriously, and her spirit, known as the Greenbrier Ghost, was said to reveal the truth of her murder, leading to her husband's conviction. In September 1938, as Europe teeters toward war, Czech civilians line up at a Red Cross office in Prague to donate blood. The Sudetenland crisis looms, and fear grips the nation. Their quiet act of solidarity stands against the shadow of approaching conflict. In 1964, Malcolm X meets Prince Faisal, the future king of Saudi Arabia, during his pilgrimage to Mecca. The encounter profoundly shaped Malcolm's worldview, reinforcing his belief in unity across race and faith, and inspiring his shift toward a more global message of justice and equality. In October 1945, European colonists cheer as French troops march through Saigon's Rue Cacnat. The parade marks France's return to Indochina after World War II. Beneath the flags and music lies growing tension, as Vietnamese resistance movements prepare to fight for their own independence. In the 1980s, Monica Macias, daughter of deposed Equatorial Guinean dictator Francisco Macias Ngziema, lives in North Korea under Kim Il-sung's guardianship. Sent there as a child after her father's fall, she grows up immersed in the regime's ideology, a life between exile and indoctrination. On June 22, 1941, crowds gather around radios in Moscow as the voice of Molotov announces Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union. Shock turns to resolve. Ordinary citizens stand in silence, realizing the great patriotic war has begun, changing their lives and their nation forever. In 1990, long queues form outside Moscow's first McDonald's for many Soviets. It is their first taste of the West, a simple burger symbolizing freedom, curiosity, and change. The golden arches rise as the Iron Curtain slowly crumbles, marking a new cultural era. In the early 1970s, Saddam Hussein, then Iraq's vice president, meets with tribal leaders. Wearing a military uniform, he listens carefully, building alliances that would cement his power. These calculated gestures helped transform him from a political enforcer into Iraq's future dictator. Liverpool Street Station in 1932 hums with the rhythm of interwar Britain. Commuters rush beneath towering steel arches as steam and soot fill the air. The photo captures a world between wars, modern yet uncertain, poised on the edge of another turbulent decade. Brigham Young's 1865 portrait shows the stern gaze of a leader who shaped the American West. founder of Salt Lake City and patriarch of a vast family. He led thousands of Mormon pioneers through hardship to build a religious community in the desert that endures to this day. In 1936, Valencia, a young officer of the anti-fascist workers and peasants militias, poses with two women fighters. Surrounded by printing presses, they symbolize Spain's divided soul, idealism and defiance in the face of looming civil war. Their expressions carry both conviction and uncertainty. On November 11, 1989, East German border guards peer into West Berlin as the wall crumbles. The divide that defined their lives for nearly 3 decades is gone. Confusion, disbelief, and cautious hope fill their eyes as the world witnesses the end of an era.